The golden sunrise bathed Ridgewood Academy in a soft glow, its towering pillars and pristine lawns standing as symbols of prestige and exclusivity. Students arrived in sleek black town cars, their designer backpacks slung over their shoulders, chatting about upcoming internships, lavish vacations, and family connections that guaranteed them futures filled with success. Among them, however, stood Emma Dawson, gripping a carefully prepared folder in her trembling hands. Unlike the others, Emma hadn't arrived in a chauffeur-driven vehicle. She had woken up before dawn, helped her mother feed the animals, milk the cows, and gather eggs before hitching a ride on a supply truck that occasionally passed through her small town. The journey had been long, but she had rehearsed this moment in her head so many times that the exhaustion barely registered. This scholarship was her only chance, her only escape from a life of endless labor and financial struggle. The large double doors of the administration building loomed ahead. Students brushed past her, their expensive cologne and perfumes filling the air as they barely acknowledged her presence. She knew she didn't fit in, not with her faded jeans, scuffed boots, and a blouse that had been mended more times than she could count. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that she had earned this opportunity. She had worked harder than anyone she knew, aced every test, and crafted an application that should have made any school proud to have her. Her breath was unsteady as she climbed the marble steps. The halls inside were lined with portraits of past graduates, many of whom had gone on to become CEOs, government officials, and business moguls. Their polished smiles seemed to sneer down at her, as if warning her she did not belong. Shaking off the doubt, she pushed open the heavy wooden door to the principal's office and stepped inside. Principal Harrison barely looked up from his sleek mahogany desk. His perfectly tailored suit, graying temples, and expensive watch spoke of a man who had spent his life in the company of wealth and privilege. Behind him, a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf was filled with awards, accolades, and photos of him shaking hands with influential figures. Everything about him exuded power. Emma swallowed hard and approached his desk, holding out her folder. "Good morning, sir. My name is Emma Dawson. I've come to submit my scholarship application." The principal finally lifted his gaze, eyes flicking over her before settling on the folder in her hands. He took it without a word, flipping through the pages with a look of mild boredom. For a moment, her heart soared. He was actually considering it. Then he chuckled, a quiet, condescending sound that made her stomach drop. "Dawson," he murmured, glancing at one of the pages. "As in Dawson Farms." Emma nodded. "Yes, sir. My mother and I run the farm." Principal Harrison leaned back in his chair, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. "And you think Ridgewood Academy is the right place for you?" Emma straightened her posture. "Yes, sir. I have a 4.0 GPA. I placed first in the state science fair. My essay." The principal waved a dismissive hand. "I'm sure you're a hard-working girl, but let's be realistic. Ridgewood Academy isn't just about grades. We cultivate leaders, students who are destined for greatness, who come from families that have the resources and connections to ensure they thrive in the real world." Emma's hands tightened around the edge of the desk. "But isn't that the point of a scholarship? To give students like me an opportunity?" He sighed, as if she was a child asking an obvious question. "Scholarships are for students who can bring prestige to Ridgewood, not farmhands." The word sliced through her like a blade. For a moment, she couldn't move. The office seemed to shrink around her, the weight of humiliation pressing against her chest. She had expected skepticism, maybe even doubt, but outright dismissal. It wasn't fair. "But sir," she tried again, her voice barely above a whisper, "That will be all, Miss Dawson," Principal Harrison said coolly, sliding her folder back across the desk. "I suggest you focus on something more suitable for your background, perhaps agricultural studies." A giggle from the doorway made Emma's stomach tighten. She turned to see Sabrina Kingsley, the principal's star student and daughter of a powerful real estate mogul, standing in the doorway. She was the kind of girl who never had to try for anything. Her last name alone opened doors Emma could only dream of. Sabrina smirked, arms crossed over her designer blouse. "Oh, Principal Harrison, don't be too harsh. Maybe she can be the school's official gardener." Laughter erupted from a group of students passing by in the hallway. Emma felt their mocking stares burning into her. Her vision blurred, but she refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not in front of them. She grabbed her folder with shaking hands and turned on her heel, pushing past Sabrina as she stormed out of the office. The laughter faded as she ran down the hallway, her boots clacking against the marble floors. By the time she reached the entrance, her breath was ragged. She stumbled outside and pressed her back against one of the grand pillars, gripping the folder so tightly her fingers ached. This was it, the end of everything she had worked for. She had been a fool to believe she ever had a chance. The scholarship had been more than just an opportunity. It had been hope, a future, a way out of a life she had never chosen, but had always fought to rise above. And in a single moment, that future had been torn away, discarded like it was worthless. Emma took a deep, shaky breath. She had to face reality. Ridgewood Academy wasn't meant for people like her. As she lifted her head, she caught a glimpse of the school's entrance gate. Beyond it, the world stretched far and wide. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't need Ridgewood Academy to prove her worth. Maybe her story wasn't over yet. She wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and took the first step away from the school that had rejected her. What she didn't know was that everything was about to change. The next morning, a private jet would land on campus, and when she stepped out of it, everyone, including Principal Harrison, would realize just how wrong they had been. The next morning, Ridgewood Academy's campus buzzed with its usual air of entitlement. Students arrived in luxury cars, discussing weekend yacht trips and upcoming galas, oblivious to the real world outside their bubble. Principal Harrison sat in his office, sipping his imported espresso, already having forgotten about the farmer's daughter who had dared to believe she belonged at his prestigious institution. Sabrina Kingsley, draped in designer labels from head to toe, sat in the campus cafe with her circle of equally privileged friends. She twirled her diamond-studded pen between her fingers, recounting the previous day's encounter with Emma Dawson. "I mean, can you imagine?" she said, laughing. "A farm girl. Here, at Ridgewood. It's ridiculous." Her friends giggled in agreement, their manicured fingers tapping against their custom-made coffee cups. She probably thought she could charm her way in with her tragic little sob story, one of them mused. "Please," Sabrina scoffed. "Scholarships are for people who actually deserve them." The conversation was cut short by an unexpected disturbance, a loud whirring sound that grew louder by the second. Students turned their heads toward the sky, shielding their eyes from the sun as the unmistakable roar of jet engines filled the air. The sound was deafening, foreign to a place where the only things that arrived were chauffeured limousines and high-end sports cars. A private jet, sleek, white, and clearly worth millions, descended from the sky, heading straight for the Academy's private landing strip. Gasps rippled through the campus. "Who the hell is that?" one student asked, scrambling for their phone to record the spectacle. Principal Harrison, alerted by the commotion, stepped outside with a furrowed brow. Ridgewood Academy had powerful connections, but even for his elite school, an unannounced jet landing was unheard of. The plane touched down smoothly, its sheer grandeur sending whispers through the crowd. This wasn't just any private jet. It was a statement, a presence that commanded attention. The Ridgewood students, who prided themselves on knowing everyone who mattered, exchanged bewildered glances. No one knew who this belonged to. The engine shut down, the air thick with anticipation. A moment later, the jet door opened, and the metal staircase descended. Silence fell over the crowd. Then, a single figure stepped out onto the top of the stairs. Emma Dawson. But she wasn't the same girl they had mocked the day before. Gone were the faded jeans and worn-out boots. In their place was a perfectly tailored, midnight blue outfit, sleek yet understated, with a quiet kind of wealth that didn't scream for attention. It demanded it effortlessly. Her long auburn hair, once hastily tied back in a ponytail, cascaded in soft waves, framing a face that looked as calm and composed as if she had always belonged here. A pair of dark sunglasses concealed her eyes, adding an air of mystery, but the way she held herself, the quiet confidence in her posture, the poised way she descended the stairs, sent a ripple of disbelief through the crowd. Principal Harrison's mouth went dry. Sabrina Kingsley's jaw slackened. Her once amused smirk wiped clean from her face. Whispers erupted among the students. "What the hell is going on? Is that Emma? Wait, how does she have a private jet?" Emma's boots clicked against the pavement as she stepped onto the campus, every eye on her. The very same people who had looked down on her just yesterday now watched in stunned silence. She stopped, slipping off her sunglasses. Her sharp green eyes locked onto Principal Harrison, who still stood frozen at the entrance of the school. "Good morning, Principal Harrison," she said, her voice steady. "I hope you remember me." For the first time in his career, the seasoned administrator found himself speechless. Sabrina, who had always believed herself untouchable, struggled to find her voice. "Dudu, what is this? What are you doing here?" Emma tilted her head slightly. "Oh, didn't you hear?" she said, a slow smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "I'm here for my meeting." A sharp beep interrupted the tension. Several heads turned as a convoy of black SUVs pulled up along the curb, their tinted windows reflecting the stunned expressions of Ridgewood students. The back door of the lead SUV swung open, and a man in a tailored suit stepped out. His presence alone commanded attention. Broad-shouldered, polished, radiating influence. Principal Harrison's face paled as recognition dawned. He knew this man. Everyone did. Elliot Dawson. Billionaire, entrepreneur, one of the most powerful men in the country. Emma Dawson's father. The revelation struck like a thunderclap. The crowd erupted. "No freaking way. She's a Dawson. That Dawson." Principal Harrison felt his stomach twist into a knot. He had humiliated this girl, insulted her. And now, standing before him, was not just a farm girl but the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the world. Emma held his gaze, watching as realization crashed down on him. She could see it, the way he scrambled internally, trying to recover from his grave mistake. "Ah, Mr. Dawson," Harrison stammered, forcing a smile. What a wonderful surprise." Elliot Dawson stepped forward, his gaze ice-cold as he sized up the man who had rejected his daughter. "I wasn't planning to come here personally," Elliot said, his voice even but carrying an unmistakable weight of authority. "But after the way your institution treated my daughter, I decided it was necessary." Principal Harrison swallowed hard, sweat forming at the back of his neck. Emma, still calm, turned to the students, especially Sabrina. "Funny, isn't it?" she mused. "How people assume they know someone's worth just by looking at them." Sabrina, for once in her life, had no words. Emma let the moment linger before shifting her focus back to the principal. "You told me this school was for future leaders," she said. "That I didn't belong." She took a step forward, and the power dynamic had completely shifted. "So tell me, Principal Harrison, do I belong now?" Silence. Tension coiled in the air so thick that no one dared breathe. Principal Harrison opened his mouth, but no words came out. Emma didn't need to hear them. She already knew the answer. The silence stretched across the campus like a heavy fog, thick with disbelief and unspoken regret. Principal Harrison, usually so confident and composed, found himself drowning in the weight of his own mistake. He had dismissed Emma Dawson as nothing more than a farmer's daughter, someone unworthy of Ridgewood Academy's elite halls. And yet, here she stood, draped in quiet power, her billionaire father at her side, and an entire crowd hanging on her every word. Elliot Dawson's gaze remained locked on the principal, his expression unreadable. The man exuded an authority that couldn't be ignored, the kind that came from years of hard-earned success rather than inherited privilege. His presence alone sent ripples of unease through the faculty members who had rushed outside to witness the spectacle, their hushed whispers filling the air like static. Sabrina Kingsley, who had spent years believing she was untouchable, stood frozen in place. Her father's wealth had always given her a sense of security, but in this moment, it felt insignificant compared to the sheer magnitude of power Emma now represented. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into the fabric of her designer handbag, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Emma, however, remained perfectly composed. She let the weight of the moment settle before turning to her father. "Should we go inside?" she asked, her tone light, as if she hadn't just shattered every preconceived notion about her. Elliot gave a slight nod. "I think that would be best." Without another glance at Principal Harrison, he led the way toward the school's grand entrance, his presence alone parting the crowd like the tide. Emma followed, her strides confident, each step a silent declaration that she belonged. The stunned onlookers barely moved, their heads turning in unison as they watched the two of them disappear through the towering doors. Inside, the marble floors gleamed under the soft glow of the chandeliers, the same halls that had once felt so suffocating to Emma now feeling strangely insignificant. She had spent the previous day feeling like an imposter, like she had been foolish to believe she deserved a place among Ridgewood's so-called elite. But now she understood. The people here weren't better than her. They had just been told they were. A receptionist, clearly flustered, scrambled to her feet as Elliot approached. "Mr. Dawson," she stammered. "Daliu, we weren't expecting you." "That's evident," he said coolly. "We have a meeting with Principal Harrison. Kindly inform him." The receptionist nodded hastily, reaching for the phone, her hands shaking as she dialed. Emma could already picture what was happening on the other end. Harrison scrambling to make sense of the situation, to salvage his reputation, to undo the damage he had done. It was too late for that. A few minutes later, the large office doors creaked open, revealing Principal Harrison standing behind his desk, his face carefully composed but his eyes betraying his nerves. "Mr. Dawson," he greeted, forcing a smile. "Please, have a seat." Elliot didn't move. Neither did Emma. The tension in the room was palpable. "I don't believe we'll be staying long," Elliot said. His voice was measured, but there was an unmistakable sharpness to it. "I simply wanted to address something before I make a final decision regarding my next steps." Harrison swallowed. "Of course. What would you like to discuss?" Emma let the silence stretch before speaking. "Yesterday," she said, her voice steady, "I came into your office with my scholarship application. I had the grades, the qualifications, the dedication, and yet you didn't even give me the courtesy of a real review." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Miss Dawson, you humiliated me," she continued, cutting him off. "Not because I wasn't worthy, but because of where I come from." She took a slow step forward, her eyes locked onto his. "I was told this school was for future leaders," she said, "for people destined for greatness. But you and I both know that what you really meant was that it's for people who are already privileged. People who fit a mold that makes your job easier." The principal exhaled, his hands gripping the desk as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. "Miss Dawson," he said carefully, "I can admit that I may have misjudged the situation." Emma tilted her head. "Misjudged?" Harrison's throat bobbed as he forced a nod. "Yes, and for that Elliot cut in, his voice like steel. "Let me be very clear, Principal Harrison. This isn't just about Emma. It's about every student you've dismissed without a second thought. Every hard-working kid who didn't have the right last name or the right bank account balance, but had the talent to succeed." The principal stiffened. "Mr. Dawson, I assure you, Ridgewood Academy has always upheld the highest standards." Elliot scoffed. "No, you haven't. You've upheld a system that caters to the wealthy and powerful, and you've done it at the expense of truly brilliant students who deserve better." The silence was deafening. Harrison had no rebuttal, no carefully crafted excuse that could undo the reality of his actions. Emma took a deep breath before delivering the final blow. "You asked me if I belonged here," she said, "but the real question is, do you?" Harrison's face lost all color. Elliot turned toward Emma. "We're done here." Without another word, he walked out of the office, Emma following close behind. As they stepped back into the hallway, students still lingered, whispering, watching. Some of them, maybe for the first time, looked at her with something other than disdain. Respect, admiration, uncertainty about their own place in the world now that their carefully constructed hierarchy had been shaken. Sabrina Kingsley stood near the lockers, her expression unreadable. Emma met her gaze for only a second before walking past her, leaving her standing there, speechless. As Emma and her father exited the building, the jet still waiting for them, Elliot glanced down at her. "You handled yourself well," he said. Emma let out a slow breath. "I had a good teacher." He smirked. "I meant your mother." She laughed, shaking her head. They reached the jet, but before stepping inside, Emma turned back for one last look at Ridgewood Academy. She had come here seeking validation. She had left understanding that she never needed it in the first place. Her future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: this was only the beginning. As the jet's engines roared to life, the hum of power resonated beneath Emma Dawson's feet. She sat back in the plush leather seat, her father across from her, both of them silent as the plane ascended into the sky. Below, Ridgewood Academy shrank into the distance, a mere speck on the horizon. But to Emma, it felt like a world she had never truly belonged to. She had gone there seeking validation, but what she had found instead was the harsh reality of a system that only favored the privileged. As the clouds parted and the sun dipped lower on the horizon, Emma reflected on the conversation she'd had with Principal Harrison. His apologies, his stammering attempts to recover from the humiliation he had caused, had been hollow. But what struck her more than anything was how quickly he had folded, how easily the arrogance that had fueled his rejection of her had crumbled the moment her father's name had been spoken. Elliot Dawson leaned back, folding his arms across his chest, his eyes never leaving the window. He wasn't one for small talk, and Emma respected that. But she knew he was processing just as much as she was. "I never wanted you to feel like you weren't enough," Elliot said, breaking the silence. Emma glanced at him, raising an eyebrow. "You've never made me feel that way, Dad." His lips twitched, a small, almost imperceptible smile. "No, but I see how the world does. People like us, we always have to prove we're worthy. To people who think they know what success looks like, but they don't understand the price we've paid to get here." Emma looked down at her hands. "I thought Ridgewood was the key, the place that would give me a chance to prove myself. I worked so hard for that scholarship. I thought they would see me for who I really am." "You don't need them to see you for who you are," Elliot said gently. "You've already proven that to me, and to yourself. That's all that matters." The words sank in deeper than Emma expected. It wasn't the first time he'd reassured her, but this felt different. This time, it wasn't just about achieving something for the sake of recognition. It was about proving that her worth was never tied to the approval of people who only saw the surface. As the plane soared through the sky, Emma's thoughts drifted to her mother, who had worked tirelessly alongside her father, building their farm from the ground up. The late nights, the countless hours of labor, the constant struggle to keep things afloat, all of it had shaped her into who she was today. It was the life they had chosen, and while it wasn't glamorous, it had forged an unbreakable resilience in her. The kind of resilience that Ridgewood couldn't have prepared her for. It wasn't about the clothes or the brands or the private jet. It was about the strength inside her that no one could take away. As they flew over sprawling fields and distant mountains, Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting a message from her friends back home. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. "Emma, it's me. Savannah, I owe you an apology. Can we talk? Savannah Kingsley, the girl who had mocked her in the hallways of Ridgewood, the one who had stood alongside her father's wealth and privilege, casting judgment on Emma for the mere fact that she wasn't born into that world. Emma had expected Savannah to be the last person to reach out to her. But she knew that things had changed now. Savannah had seen something in Emma that she hadn't before, and the realization of that, of how the tables had turned so swiftly, was impossible to ignore. Emma hesitated for a moment before replying. I'm listening. It was a simple message, but for Emma, it felt like a step toward something more. She wasn't sure if it was forgiveness or something else entirely, but the fact that Savannah was reaching out meant that the divide between them wasn't as wide as it had seemed. Maybe there was a chance for connection. Maybe there was a way forward, not just for her, but for others like her who had been overlooked, underestimated, or outright ignored. The plane continued its steady ascent, cutting through the clouds, and Emma felt a sense of clarity wash over her. There were more battles to fight, more people to prove wrong, but she didn't need Ridgewood to validate her. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone who hadn't seen her worth from the start. I've made my peace with it, she said softly to her father, her voice filled with determination. I won't let them define me. Elliot nodded, his gaze steady. Good, because, Emma, the world is full of people who will try to tell you who you are, but only you get to decide that. As the city lights began to twinkle below them, the vastness of the world seemed to stretch out before her. There was so much to explore, so much potential yet to be realized, and for the first time, Emma felt like she was ready to embrace it all. The jet's engines hummed a steady rhythm as they soared through the night sky, a quiet promise of the future that awaited her, one that was no longer bound by the narrow expectations of Ridgewood Academy or any institution that sought to keep people like her in their place. She wasn't just the daughter of a farmer. She was Emma Dawson, and that was enough. Savannah's text buzzed again. I know I can't take back what I said or did, but I want to make things right. Let me prove it to you. Emma stared at the message, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She didn't have the answers yet. She didn't know what the future held or how things would unfold, but in this moment, she realized that sometimes the first step toward healing was simply allowing others to try. She typed back, We'll see where this goes. And just like that, a new chapter began, not just for Emma, but for everyone who had ever felt the sting of rejection or the weight of being underestimated. The world had yet to see what she was truly capable of, and Emma was ready to show them. The jet continued its flight through the vast expanse of the night, its wings cutting through the darkness like a beacon of possibility. The days following Emma's departure from Ridgewood Academy felt like a blur of both relief and uncertainty. As the jet touched down in the sprawling estate of her family's farm, the familiar scent of earth and hay filled the air, an unmistakable reminder of where she had come from. Her father's gaze softened as he glanced over at her, sensing the mix of emotions she was carrying. Home, he murmured quietly, pulling the car to a stop. Emma didn't say anything at first, but the word itself, spoken aloud, seemed to settle over her like a quiet comfort. Home. It was a place she had once thought she needed to escape from, a place that had held her back in the eyes of others. But now, as she sat in the car, watching the familiar sights of their property come into view, she felt something shift. Home wasn't just a physical location. It was the foundation upon which everything she had built was based. Despite the whirlwind of emotions she'd experienced over the past few days, one thing had become clearer than ever. She didn't need Ridgewood Academy to validate her. She didn't need their approval or their preconceived notions about who she was or where she came from. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. She reached into her pocket and saw the name on the screen. Savannah Kingsley. Emma hesitated for a moment. She had been uncertain of how to proceed with this newfound connection. She didn't owe Savannah forgiveness, but something about the sincerity in her message made Emma pause. Hey Emma, I've been thinking about what you said the other day. I was wrong. I want to help you. however I can." Emma sat back in the car, staring at the text. It had been an unexpected turn of events, to say the least. Savannah, once her biggest tormentor, now wanted to make amends. Part of Emma wanted to brush it off, to leave the past where it belonged. But another part of her wondered if this was a chance for something more. Perhaps there was something to be learned from this, something that could help her grow. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew she needed to keep moving forward. "Dad," Emma said, breaking the silence in the car, "I think I need to go back to Ridgewood. I'm not sure if it's what I want anymore, but I can't let them think they've won. I need to finish what I started." Elliot's eyes flicked to her, a slow smile spreading across his face. "I've always known you had that fight in you. I just don't want to feel like I've been running from everything," Emma replied quietly. "I don't want to be the person who runs away when things get hard." Her father's expression softened. "You've never been that person, Emma. You've always fought. You've always kept going, no matter what." "I know," she said, a wave of confidence building inside her, "but I can't do it alone. I think it's time to make things right with Savannah. I don't know where it will lead, but I want to try." Elliot nodded slowly, his eyes filled with pride. "Then go. Do what you need to do, and don't let anyone tell you who you are or what you're worth." It wasn't long before Emma found herself back at Ridgewood Academy, standing in front of the towering gates that once felt like an impenetrable barrier. The sky above was overcast, mirroring the storm of emotions swirling inside her. This time, though, she wasn't here to beg for validation. She was here to prove something, to herself, to everyone who had doubted her, and yes, even to Savannah. The moment she stepped onto the campus, the air seemed to shift. The whispers that once followed her like a shadow now felt almost distant, as if the weight of the world had been lifted off her shoulders. She wasn't the same girl who had walked through these gates in defeat. No, Emma Dawson was a different person now. Stronger, more self-assured, and ready to take on whatever the future held. She made her way to the administration building, her heart pounding in her chest. Inside, the usual hustle and bustle of the school day played out, but Emma's focus was singular. She needed to find Savannah, to speak to her, to figure out if they could move forward. When she finally found her, standing near the student lounge, Savannah was talking to a group of friends. But when she saw Emma approaching, she excused herself and walked toward her. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Savannah said quietly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Emma smiled, a flicker of warmth in her eyes. "I wasn't sure either, but here I am." Savannah nodded, her eyes searching Emma's face. "I owe you an apology, Emma, for everything. The way I treated you, the things I said. I was just scared. I didn't know how to handle the fact that you were different. I thought I had to be better than you, to put you down so I could feel in control." Emma took a deep breath. She could feel the sincerity in Savannah's words, but that didn't erase the hurt that had built up over the years. Still, she had come here to move forward, not to dwell on the past. "I get it," Emma said softly. "I don't think I ever truly understood why you acted the way you did, but I've come to realize that it wasn't about me. It was about your own insecurities, your own fears. But that doesn't mean I'm just going to forget everything." Savannah nodded. "I don't expect you to. I just want to make things right. I want to help you, Emma. I want to be a better person, and I know I can start by making amends with you." Emma looked at her for a long moment, the silence between them thick with unspoken emotions. Then, finally, Emma spoke. "Maybe there's something we can do together," she said, her voice steady. "Maybe we can change things here. Maybe we can make Ridgewood a place where people like us, people who are different, who come from different backgrounds, are accepted for who they are." Savannah's eyes widened. "You'd be willing to work with me?" Emma smiled. "If you're serious about making things right, then yes. Let's work together." It was a turning point, one that neither of them had seen coming. For the first time, Emma felt the power of forgiveness, not just for herself, But for the people who had wronged her, she didn't need to hold on to the bitterness anymore. She could let it go. And in doing so, she realized that sometimes the greatest strength came not from fighting the battles around you, but from choosing to heal the wounds within. As the two girls stood there, a new chapter began, not just for them, but for the entire campus. Ridgewood Academy, once a place of division and judgment, now had the potential to become something more. And Emma Dawson, once the girl who had been overlooked and underestimated, was ready to lead the charge. Weeks passed, and Ridgewood Academy, once a place of pressure and isolation for Emma, began to feel like a second home. The collaboration with Savannah had transformed their relationship into something more powerful than either had anticipated. What started as an uneasy truce between two girls from vastly different worlds soon blossomed into a partnership, one that aimed to reshape the very culture of their school. It was not easy, but the changes they made were undeniable. They started a campaign to highlight the importance of inclusivity, diversity, and real-world skills that transcended wealth and privilege. They brought in speakers from different backgrounds, people who had built their own empires from nothing, or overcome personal struggles that made them stronger. As Emma walked through the campus, she could no longer see it as a place of judgment. The halls no longer echoed with whispers behind her back, and the glances from the students who once looked down on her now felt like silent acknowledgement. She had earned her place here, not by conforming to what others thought she should be, but by staying true to herself. Her bond with Savannah grew stronger, too. They started spending more time together, both at school and outside of it. Savannah had her own battles to fight, especially within her family. Her father had always placed extreme pressure on her to succeed, and his approval had always come with strings attached. But now, Savannah was beginning to question the expectations that had been placed on her. The conversations between the two girls were filled with vulnerability and truth, something Emma had never thought possible just a few months ago. As the school year neared its end, Emma found herself standing on the steps of the administration building, gazing out over the sprawling campus. The view was different now. Instead of feeling like an outsider, she felt a sense of ownership over the space. Ridgewood Academy had become more than just an institution. It had become a place where people like her could thrive. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her from her thoughts. She pulled it out and saw a message from her father. "Got a call from the school. They want to offer you a full scholarship. They're impressed with what you've done for the community." Emma blinked, her heart skipping a beat. A full scholarship. She had been so focused on the work she had done alongside Savannah, on making a difference, that she hadn't expected this kind of recognition. But then again, maybe it wasn't about the scholarship. Maybe it was about the change she had helped bring about. The conversation she had started. The doors she had opened for students who, like her, had once felt like they didn't belong. She smiled, texting back, "Thanks, Dad. I think I might just take it." Her father's reply came almost immediately. "Proud of you, Emma." A feeling of warmth washed over her, a reassurance that no matter where life took her, her family would always have her back. Her father had always told her that hard work and resilience would take her places, but now Emma understood that true success wasn't measured by wealth or status. It was measured by the lives you touched, the people you helped, and the ways you changed the world around you. Later that evening, Emma met up with Savannah at their favorite cafe. They sat in a quiet corner booth, sipping coffee and talking about everything and nothing. It was here, in the midst of their casual conversation, that Emma realized how much she had grown, how far she had come since the days when she had stepped onto Ridgewood's campus as a girl who didn't belong. "I'm glad we did this," Savannah said, breaking the silence. Emma nodded. "Me too. You've shown me a different side of things, Savannah. I never thought we'd be sitting here like this." Savannah smiled, her eyes softening. "I know, but it's funny how life works. Sometimes, the people you think will be your biggest obstacles end up being the ones who teach you the most." Emma's smile was genuine. "Yeah, I used to think I had to prove myself to everyone, but now I realize I just need to prove it to myself." "And you have," Savannah said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "You've done more than that. You've shown everyone here what it means to be real." As the night wore on, Emma thought about all the moments that had led her here. The rejection from Principal Harrison, the awkwardness of being an outsider in a school designed for the elite, the pain of feeling like she would never fit in. But through all of it, she had persevered. She had refused to accept the limitations others had placed on her. And now, as she looked around the familiar streets of Ridgewood, she realized that her journey had just begun. The future was wide open. There were still challenges ahead, but Emma was no longer afraid. She had learned to embrace who she was, and in doing so, she had opened the doors for others to do the same. It wasn't about the accolades or the scholarships or the recognition. It was about the lives she touched, the changes she sparked, and the courage she found within herself to keep going. When she returned home that evening, the familiar sounds of her father working in the barn greeted her. Emma walked out to the field where he was finishing up for the day, the golden light of the setting sun casting long shadows across the land. "You're looking at a full scholarship, Dad," she said, her voice full of pride. Her father stopped what he was doing, looking up at her with a mix of surprise and admiration. "Emma, that's incredible. I don't know what comes next, but I know I'm ready for it," she said, her gaze steady as she looked at him. He nodded slowly. "I've always known you were capable of great things, and I'm proud of you, Emma. I think you're going to change the world." As the evening settled into night, Emma stood beside her father, the two of them looking out over their land. The place where Emma's story had started, and where she knew, in her heart, that it would always continue. The farm had given her roots, but the journey she had taken at Ridgewood had given her wings. And now she was ready to soar.